Hi there, and welcome to Limits Unknown. Hopefully, you've looked over at the channel description, but if not, please feel free to do so after the video is over. What am I hoping to achieve here with this channel? Well, my goal is to extend the resources and explanations available to students of many different interests and at many different levels of education. My name is Drake, and I'm a college student studying chemical engineering, and I have an affinity for learning in almost any form. This channel is intended to help people of my discipline and those who have an interest in math, science, and engineering. However, my initial intentions right now, though, are to cover content in high school mathematics in order to help students do better in their studies there. I was someone who, for plenty of years, did not like math much, if at all. I often struggled to make sense of what I was being taught, and I often struggled to have a better understanding even after getting explanations from the teachers. I realized that I had two significant problems before me when I was learning math. For one, my skills were on the rustier side, and no matter how far I progressed, they were going to make me suffer due to weak points that still existed from very early on in my journey. Secondly, I found also that many teachers tend to repeat what it was they already told you. The problem I found lied in the fact that it didn't help to have the same explanation if you didn't understand it the first time. The realization I came to was that people need alternative explanations to understand things sometimes. My goal is to offer a variety of explanations for the same thing, and thusly to flesh out many ways of thinking about the same thing so that you, the learner, can stick with whatever methods make the most sense to you. Methods amidst my madness, I want to give you a forewarning. This channel will have a bit to deal with history and the etymology and morphology of words. Now, why does that have anything to do with this? Well, let me get to that. I firstly want to say that history will be of some focus, as it will flesh out the motivations for the invention and further investigation into a given field of mathematics or science. I feel without this, students tend to be divorced from any connection as to why the math or science was developed. Even if you intend to go down a road in life that may contain neither of these, the study of these topics will put you in the position to be a better thinker with better skills of induction and deduction. You'll find you have a greater capacity to understand the world around you. Personally, I feel history and even a bit of role playing will proceed to benefit students more than dryly covering the same material with no explicit purpose in mind. So this may be new to you, but I ask that you bear with me as I give this style of teaching a try. Forewarning, this is my first attempt at doing anything of the sorts, so I would ask you go a little easy on me, and if you can, please give input in the videos or on public commentary threads so as to suggest things I can improve upon. Regarding the morphology and etymology, let me define these terms for those of you who are unfamiliar with them. Morphology is the study of how prefixes, roots, and suffixes come together to form more complex words, and speaks to the meaning these individual parts give to the word as a whole. The etymology of the word is the word's own history, and I believe its history is rather inseparable from the meaning of the word itself. With these both in mind, they'll give you better context to be able to understand the words you will encounter that are technical, which one could forget about doing, but personally, I feel it is beneficial and even necessary to be able to know these terms. Generally speaking, I feel the ball is dropped a bit when trying to teach students these terms, so if there is some way to make it easier, then that is what should be done for the sake of the student. And while this might sound complicated, I personally think that this will help a lot of people. After you grow familiar with these words, you'll realize that the words themselves actually give away the meanings based on the actual parts that build them up. And you might be lucky enough to not even have to consult a dictionary. Granted, I would still advise that. In my experiences, not many people like math or science terminology that they're required to remember and oftentimes will forget. I think it's quite useful when done right, but the hope I have for this method is to make the connections to these terms and do it in such a way where it goes beyond simply memorizing them. If you have if you have no intention of going into more advanced math or science than what you learn in high school, then that's fine. But at some point or another, if you do, you'll eventually be required to effectively read from a textbook, and being able to know these formal terms will serve you pretty well. Anyways, for a bit of clarity, I'm putting the focus on the meaning of these words so it is to be clear what their meaning and their uses. And I think it will benefit you to know them, and you should come to learn them, but it comes with them being taught appropriately. I also want to specify that there's a lot of stress on the history of math and science. The reason I'll be doing this is so that you can bring the concepts you're learning back to the original applications that they were intended to be used for. And I think that gives a lot of good contextualization so that people can actually see why it's useful. Um, so even if you have no intention of going into any of these fields more deeply, at least there will be a purpose behind the knowledge you're gaining as you're required to learn it. So, with all that said, as I begin to embark on this journey, my goal is to cover topics in math and science, but preemptively now, it'll be dealing with high school mathematics, and eventually I will turn it into focuses on college level science and engineering as I get more opportunities to flesh out the channel's content. But one last note before I go: I will eventually try to have other engineers, science majors, and math majors become involved in the creation of content here, with the hopes that this channel can eventually expand its audience to progressively wider and wider groups of people. So, if you've watched the end of this video, I want to say sincerely thank you for bearing with me, and I hope to see you in the next one.